We're amongst friends here, aren't we? Any time one does business in India, the potential is huge.
Absolutely.
But so are the challenges.
Yes.
Are you seeing any difference, any change yet?
Definitely. I think the ease of doing business has changed. Bureaucracy is much less. So the government, led by President Modi, have done an amazing job in doing away with a lot of bureaucracy. But still, the big challenges, as he said, is infrastructure. So the soft problems are being managed. Policies have been better. Getting government on board to basically resolve issues is easy, but still there's a big problem with infrastructure.
What do you need more of?
Well, let me tell you, in infrastructure, India has ports, and we are the largest operator. There's no shortage of ports, but how do you get the cargo into where the consumers are? This is a challenge.
You know, if you just see the JNPT port in Mumbai, earlier there was no direct port delivery. The containers were going through a long process. Today, 33% of the containers are being given direct port delivery to the importers. Similarly, 77% of the containers are given direct port entry for the exporters. We want to make it 100%. So the operators, export-import operators are being authorized, and that process has been made much easier.
Right, but I think what Sultan's talking about is, okay, so you can build these beacons of efficiency at the port itself, the port gate, but if 20 miles down the road the truck and the lorries get stuck in a traffic jam or a potholed road, you have effectively negated your own benefit.
So, you know, just to kind of give you a sense of what's happened is a lot of the focus on the trade side in India had been historically on the ports side. Domestic cargo movement, logistics, had not had the same degree of investment and focus. One of the things that this government has done is that it has now put logistics as one of the infrastructure sectors, which actually solves a major funding issue for the sector, because now it's able to get infrastructure type debt.
But logistics is primarily a private sector business. You'd agree?
It is, and a lot of it is being done by the private sector. And of course, the DP World and NIF platform that we are putting together is a purely commercial operation. And the idea is that we want to create a whole platform which goes all the way from the port to the destination, and thereby offers customers a much more efficient way to transport cargo from one point to the other. And we are going to put in substantial capital into this project to make sure that the facilities that we end up with are world class.
You know, if I can just chip in here, you know, after the GST was implemented from 1st July last year, all the checkposts between the different states of India are gone. The movement of truck is at least 25% faster now. Actually, even the consumption of diesel during that period has gone down by 12%. So the movement has become much faster. I agree with you. Our challenges are there, very much there. But then there are so many ways in which they are being improved now. And having this GST, removing all the checkposts, having the truck movement much faster is one of the ways. But then the paperwork, everything is being made online now. Even the electronic waybills that will be used by the transporters are all online. I think by technology-driven governance, we are reducing the paperwork, the time taken, and the costs.
There's a wonderful contradiction every time I go to India between the modernity of the Silicon Valley mentality and then all the paperwork of stamping of documents that always has to take place. You're saying that that's going?
See, in system after system, whether you apply for incorporating a company, earlier it was taking 3 weeks to start a business, incorporate a company, getting an income tax number. Now for last 1 year it is happening in just 1 day. And now we are trying to integrate even the GST registration along with that. So a lot of these things are changing. Applying for a construction permit in a municipal corporation, earlier it was taking almost a year. Now we are bringing it down to 60 days. So those are the kind of changes being done.
Yes. You see, what he's talking about, that's the easy part. The difficult part is really getting the cargo physically to the customer. And so what we're doing with the infrastructure, the Indian Infrastructure Fund is identifying alternative ways of getting the cargo.
Well, hang on. Look, what sort of alternative ways? I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to put it on the back of a truck and send it there.
Well, not necessarily. When you talk about logistics, you talk about a certain quantity of cargo needed at a certain time for a certain period. The question is how to transport. The usual way is trucks. And trucks sit for 10 to 15 hours in one spot because of traffic. So one of the other ways which Prime Minister Modi has opened is the Indian waterways. There are 7,000 kilometers of rivers. The Dredging Corporation of India will dredge the rivers. Most of them are navigable, but we will build special vessels that can navigate in the river, and that means we're going to take the customer. DP World also, we own our own trains, and we use our own trains to connect the cargo.
I hear this, and I think of wonderment. So I think of wonderment. You know, your own trains and your own navigable waterways. And part of me thinks it's never going to happen.
It's actually happening, Richard. So just to give you a sense, if you look at Indian cargo, about 55 to 60% of that cargo moves by road, about 25% moves by rail, and just about 5-10% is marine cargo. If you look at China, marine cargo is about 30%, and by the way, marine cargo is much cheaper than road movement. Now, there are two things happening in India which I think are going to be game changers for logistics going forward. One is that the inland waterways approach of the government, project of the government, is picking up steam. So there is actually a lot of work going on right now, including a World Bank investment to start this process. And the second thing that's happening are the two dedicated freight corridors, which are rail corridors, not just rail lines. The western corridor, which is about 1,500 kilometers, is almost done. And the eastern corridor is about 1,800 kilometers, which is going to take a little longer. But these are projects that are actually under implementation and fits into this concept that Sultan just brought up about diversifying away from road transportation to marine and more importantly, rail.
Yeah. And I can add also the Sagarmala initiative, which basically equips the small little ports around India, which are today are small and maybe not set to be used for cargo, like the dhows how we handle in Dubai. These are many in India, and those will be basically modernized in such a way that it can also participate in transporting cargo.
So how much of the cargo going through the Indian ports is purely domestically driven, in the sense of for India, as opposed to, say, as a transshipment?
Let me tell you, one of the biggest problems is really getting the cargo to the customer. It's a big issue in India. It gets there, but it takes a long time and it delays. And so...
Right, but you just talked about navigable waterways and traffic. But then, even after you've got it to the ultimate destination of city, you've then got to put it on a truck. The last mile is always...
No, let me tell you. What we are doing with the Indian Infrastructure Fund people, with our logistic specialists, we are identifying certain locations where the customer needs the cargo along the river. In certain areas where we know. Look, for example, we just signed an MOU with the Jammu and Kashmir state, where we're putting a logistic park in a place that has perishable cargo that is damaged because there's no logistics. We identify a location next to the trail, and that will have specialized cold stores and cool stores so that nothing gets spoiled. This is the issue.
As Sujay pointed out, bulk of the cargo is today moving by train. But there has been very little investment in the railway infrastructure in the last 40-50 years. Result has been that the passenger trains, cargo, everything is moving on the same line. We have no dedicated freight corridor. 2 are coming up now. And in last 3.5 years, almost as much investment has been planned in railways as was done in last 65 years.
So let us say that for the purposes of this discussion, I accept every word you're saying in its entirety. Secretary, how long is it going to be before India is showing meaningful improvements? Because let's face it, if you're talking about improvement of rail structure that hasn't had investment for 45 years, that ain't going to happen in the lifespan of a one Modi administration.
See, there are a lot of things that are visible even now. There are many changes which don't need a medium and long-term result, gestation period. But there are things that are going to take time. The railways, the highways, the ports, inland waterways, logistics park, they will take. You have a certain gestation period. But there are many reforms that the government is doing, our Prime Minister is doing, like GST, that the impact is already being felt. So I think there are many reforms on the other side, the whole sector after sector.
Which raises... Go ahead.
Yeah. In continuation, for example, the deal we signed in Jammu and Kashmir, if we get the green light, immediately we start construction. We're ready. But one thing...
Who needs to give you the green light?
The state, which we're working with them now.
Are they here?
Yes.
Where are they?
The minister is there.
Are you going to give him the green light? I'm sorry? He says he's given you the green light.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Well, hang on. He's given you the green light and you just said you'd start construction.
We can start. Actually, our engineers going to be tomorrow in Jammu and Kashmir.
Why aren't they there today? Just asking.
No, but let me tell you.
Yes.
One thing important you have to identify.
Yeah.
When you talk about logistics, you talk about cost. Everything has a cost. The most efficient, cheapest transportation mode is always by water, whether by sea or by river. Then you will get trucks and trains. Trains expensive, of course.
But they carry so much stuff.
Trains are expensive. I mean, today you hear about the Siberian Express cargo between China to Europe, $5,000 a container. Takes 12 days. By ship it is $500. Take 42 days. So if it is high value, you need it to get sooner. You do it by train. But if we allow intermodal concept, that means utilizing the best mode of transportation, rail, road, river, sea, and air, then we have given the consumer a choice. If it has to arrive tomorrow, he'll ship it the most expensive way.
But the fascinating part, Sultan, and you and I have talked about this before, DP World and Dubai operates at a 21st century level, state of the art in these things. You know, globally, you are best in class on these issues. India, on many of these things, you'd have to agree, is barely 20th century.
No, but let me correct one thing. As far as the port, DP World, we have a system. We operate 21st century in Dubai and in India. In every port around the world, the same system. The problem is, when the cargo leaves the gate,
right.
So
that's your problem. Well, no, it's his problem, but it's your responsibility.
See, ports, you cannot have 20th century ports and 21st century movement of cargo. It's not possible. There's a lot of need for upgradation.
Right, but it's you that has to get it right.
But you know, I'll tell you, this World Bank has, you might know, a logistics performance index, which they bring out once in 2 years. In 2016, we actually made an improvement of 19 ranks in that, and that is an assessment of the foreigners who do business in India, and that concerns movement of cargo within India. So we made that improvement. Recently, we did a ranking of states on logistics performance index to set up a competition among them, make them aware of reduced. So you can see that in the short term also, as shown by this World Bank index, there is an improvement in movement of cargo, and this will actually become much more in the coming years.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that look, I mean, we are investing a large amount of capital into the infrastructure sector, and the way we want to do it is we want to combine that capital with the best expertise. Now, in some cases, that expertise comes from outside India. So one of the platforms we are doing, for example, is with DP World, and clearly we are bringing that expertise in and investing together. In another case, we are taking the expertise inside India, because there are lots of areas where the expertise in India are actually very good. And this is in the real estate sector, which is more domestic. But again, we are combining our capital with foreign capital with that kind of expertise. But I wanted to also come back, Richard, for a second to one of the things you said, which is, when is it going to happen?
Yes.
And one of the things I wanted to mention over here is that's the question that exactly makes India very exciting right now. Because when in my previous life I used to do emerging markets investing, we used to look at three things. We used to look at the macro level. We used to look at macro stability, we used to look at growth and demographics, and we used to look at ongoing reforms. And the third point was critical. And I think the most exciting time, if things are absolutely perfect, I think it's less exciting to invest into that market than when things are actually improving. And I think that's what the story of India is right now.
So, finally, because we're out of time just about, you would agree, I think we could all agree that change is taking place, and it's not taking place probably fast enough. You'd agree?
No, I think we can definitely do faster reform, but then our Prime Minister is always in a hurry. He wants to transform the country, and we are all working hard to make his vision of New India by 2022 a reality. So we really don't want to lose any time.
In a year that I've been in India, the tax regime has changed, the FDI regime has changed, and the currency regime has changed. That's pretty fast.
I don't think we need to talk about the currency regime. I think that's one that we should perhaps best leave to another discussion in a different...
There's a lot of change.
In a different form. I think we can agree, settle on change. Are you satisfied with the amount of change?
I am hoping. The reason I'm hoping and I'm optimistic is that Prime Minister Modi put targets for growth. They are facing a high growth. There is no way to cope with that growth and sustain it without fixing the problem that we are facing. So I know the government is serious, investing billions to make sure that the infrastructure is built. This is the thing that we really feel.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. I think you'll all agree, a robust, forthright debate on the problems and the challenges, but the opportunities facing India. Thank you very much indeed.